Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. We're going to be in the old 3rd edition Player's Handbook for D&D. This is a continuation of the War Magic series that I was doing for Pathfinder. We're now checking out the older spells from 3rd edition D&D, and if you think some of these spells are interesting or better, you could introduce them into your game because they should be compatible. It's all D20 3rd edition-ish rules. So we are on the Druid class for this video. We're looking at 1st level spells. We'll look at the spells, we'll read in what they do, we'll come up with how you could use those spells, if it's possible, for a mass warfare combat. There we are. So we're skipping the 0 level spells because in 3rd edition D&D, the 0 level spells are about as potent as they are in any other Pathfinder 3.5. The difference is in 3rd edition D&D, you only had a set amount of spots you could prepare the spells. When you cast them, they were gone. Unlike now in Pathfinder, when you could cast them over and over and over again. So the first spell on the Druid list for 1st level is Animal Friendship. Casting that gains a permanent animal companion. Unlike Pathfinder, you had to go out and find the animal and cast Animal Friendship on it. Usually you provided it with some sort of food or something that it would like, and that would give it reason for the magic to take hold. And then it would follow you and it would learn some tricks. It would get a little bit more powerful as you went up in level, but it wouldn't scale the way it does now. So there's not really much use for that as a military combat thing. Calm Animals, on the other hand, can be very useful. It calms 2d4 plus 1 per level hit dice of animals, beasts, and magical beasts. So if the opposing military is using war animals, war dogs, or any other animal type to fight, that could be useful. So let's look that one up and see what the radius of that is, and then see if there's a way that we could use that in a more effective manner than just casting it. Okay, it's close range, so 25 feet plus 5 feet per 2 levels. The animals have to be within 30 feet of each other. Okay, so it's like a 30-foot radius. The spell stays in effect for 1 minute per level, so for 10 rounds per level. So if you could get that on some grenades, or one-use sling bullets, where the sling bullet is the grenade for the spell, you could throw that into a group of the animals, and it would go off and they'd have to make a save or have their emotions calmed for for 10 rounds per level. And if they wanted to make it more potent, they could do it for half an hour, or not half an hour, for 3 rounds, which would be 3 minutes, which would be 30 rounds. Sorry. And that could keep the panicked or the fighting beasts calm. Cure Light Wounds. Cures 1d8 plus 1 per level damage. This was your source of healing when you were a druid or cleric in 3rd edition D&D. You didn't have, as a cleric, the area channel that you have now. So this was how you would heal, was with the Cure Light Wounds. So put that on some one-use items. And the best is the potion. So just make sure your guys have potions. Detect animals or plants. Detect species of animals or plants. This is great if you're hunting, or if you're fighting an unknown animal or plant threat. But other than that, I could see it being useful if you're trying to explore enemy territory that you're not familiar with. I don't see it being useful for the battlefield itself, unless you can find something that you could set up for them to walk into as a trap, like a Venus flytrap plant or something, or a bear cave. They'd march next to a bear cave. You could get them that way. Detects snares and pits, reveals natural or primitive traps. So, let's look at that and make sure that it gives you a bonus. It's a 60-foot range. It's a quarter of a circle emanating from you, so it's almost a cone. Duration, concentration up to 10 minutes per level. The first round of casting the spell, you find the presence or absence of hazards. The second round, the number of hazards and the location of each. If a hazard is outside your line of sight, then you discern its direction but not its exact location. Each additional round, the general type and trigger for one particular hazard closely examined by you. Note, each round you can turn to detect things in new area. The spell can penetrate barriers, but 1 foot of stone, 1 inch of common metal, a thin sheet of lead, or 3 feet of wood or dirt blocks it. So let's start at the beginning and read the beginning. You can detect simple pits, deadfall, snares of wilderness creatures, trapdoor spiders, giants, sundews, antlions, etc., and primitive traps constructed of natural materials, man traps, missile traps, hunting snares. The spell does not detect complex traps, including trapdoor traps. The spell does detect certain natural hazards: quicksand, registered as a snare, a sinkhole, a pit, or unsafe walls of natural rock, a deadfall. However, it does not reveal other potentially dangerous conditions, such as a cavern that floods during rain, an unsafe construction, or a naturally poisonous plant. The spell does not detect magic traps, except those that operate by pit, deadfall, or snaring, nor mechanically complex ones, nor those that have been rendered safe or inactive. The amount of information revealed depends on how long you study the particular area. So that wouldn't be beneficial to you in the battle, but getting to a battle or marching your troops, that could be useful. But I don't see that being like making a difference in a battle as much as just making it easier for your soldiers to get around. Endure elements. Now this is where 3.5 changed it from 3rd edition. 3rd edition Endure elements, the first level spell, ignores 5 damage per round from 1 energy type. The version that's now in Pathfinder, that was in 3.5, just allows you to operate in cold or warm areas, like it's cooler out or warmer out depending on what it is. It doesn't actually protect you any from the damage. And endure elements could be very useful for your military. Get those on some one-use items, whether it be potions or actual items that they could hold and activate, and the item itself would disintegrate after use or just be inert. Then you would have to pre-program what type of damage would be in the item. So these protect against fire, those protect against acid, would be your situation. So you would have to create it specifically for that type. Entangle. Now this is a very useful spell without it being applied to military. But let's read in and see what, if anything, is different about Entangle in 3rd edition. The range of the entangle spell to cast it's 400 feet plus 40 feet per level, so it is a long range spell like Fireball. Plants in a 40-foot radius spread, duration 1 minute per level, so it lasts 10 rounds per level. Saving throw was reflex, spell resistance no. This targets plants, grasses, weeds, bushes, and even trees. Wrap, twist, and entwine about creatures in the area or those who enter the area, holding them fast. An entangled creature suffers a -2 penalty to attack rolls, suffers a -4 penalty to dexterity, and can't move. An entangled character who attempts to cast a spell must make a concentration check, DC 15, or lose the spell. She can break free and move half her normal speed by using the full round action to make a strength check or an escape arts check, DC 20. A creature who succeeds at a reflex saving throw is not entangled but can still move at only half speed through the area. Each round, the plants once again attempt to entangle all creatures who have avoided or escaped entanglement. Note, the DM may alter the effects of the spell somewhat based on the nature of the entangling plants, i.e. thorns would stab at them and stuff like that. Now, it's a 40-foot radius, so it's an 80-foot area. And the way me and my friends have always used it is there just has to be a plant present. It doesn't have to be a lot of plants present for it to do that. So we would carry a living plant on us and attach it to a weapon, an arrow, or use a sling to sling the plant and get the plant where you need it to be and then cast the spell. And then vines would just shoot out of the thing. The vines would do no real damage. They would do what the entangle does if there was just plants there. The favorite thing that I've used it for is, since we have that concept as the concept that me and my friends have been using, is we would attach it to an arrow, shoot it in the sky, and cast it while the arrow is flying. And now you have this 80-foot area of entangle trying to grab things that are flying out of the sky. I've also used it to break a falling from a cliff. I just held the plant and cast it, and it just grabbed us, and then it hit the ground first, breaking our fall on the way down, so we didn't take as much dice damage from the fall. So putting it on arrows and using it that way, having it activate by, say they command it, and then it's delayed like 3 seconds or 2 seconds so they can fire the arrow. You would then have these giant areas of entangle that you could envelop a formation. And even if they're not held tight by it, because most of them make their saves, then you would still have, their army wouldn't be able to keep formation, so your army could take advantage of that. So Entangle is a great spell for warfare. Fairy Fire outlines subjects with light, canceling blur, concealment, etc. Fairy Fire is going to be useful. You're going to be able to use that to outline anyone that's, say, sneaking around. You're going to be able to use that to light up an area. The downside is whatever gets hit with this is easier to hit. So using it on your own guys wouldn't be that great, but using it on the enemy, could be very good. Fairy Fire is a long range, 400 feet plus 40 feet per level. Creatures and objects within a 5-foot radius, so a 10-foot square, 10 foot by 10 foot. Lasts 1 minute per level. So, say you wanted to target someone specific in the opposing army, you could attach Fairy Fire object, like it could be an arrowhead, a bolt head, a sling bullet, and you could launch that at the enemy, and the people that are covered in the fairy fire from it are the ones that your, say, archers or spellcasters target. So you could use this to determine where concentrated fire goes. You can use it for signaling, because you could also just hit an area and everything in the area is outlined with fairy fire. So I could see that being very useful, especially for battlefield signals. Good Berry creates 2d4 berries, each cure 1 hit point, maximum of 8 hit points in 24 hours. Good Berry also does something else, and I don't think that's changed any since any of the editions I've played. Good Berry. The berries last 1 day per level after it's been cast. You or any druid of 3rd level or higher, you being the caster, or any druid 3rd level or higher can immediately discern which berries are the berries out of a handful of berries that turned into good berries. Each enchanted berry nourishes a creature as if it were a normal meal for a medium-sized creature. The berry also cures 1 point of damage when eaten, subject to a maximum of 8 points of such curing in any 24-hour period. So, good berry is a full meal when you eat it. So that could affect your supplies. Other than having a druid to cast it, how would you go about using that in warfare? You could have a container that automatically produces good berries. Say, just a clay pot, something that would probably hold 100 berries, and it itself makes good berries. And then figure out how many castings of the spell in good berries you would want it to make. And I would say probably I would have it make about 20. 20 seems about right. Or you could do a dozen, or you could do 2 dozen, or you could do a dozen and a half. The amount of berries, just make it consistent for the item on how many it produces, and it produces them once a day, or it produces them twice a day. That'd be 2 meals, which would be normal-ish for the time period. Definitely not normal for us. We eat 3 meals a day now. So you could use that, and now your food issues for moving your military or for a siege have been solved. You don't have to worry about food at all. That and a decanter of endless water, and if you're the one under sieged, now you have all the food you need and all the water you need if you have one of those containers per 20 people. So that's how I would go about using good berry for warfare. Invisibility to animals. Animals can't perceive one subject per level. If you're sneaking around, that could be very useful. But it can also be useful if you're fighting, as long as the fighting itself does not negate the invisibility. I think it does because it's 1st level spell, but we will read in and find out. Okay, so this affects 1 creature touched per level. Animals cannot perceive the warded creature They act as though the warded creature are not there. Warded creatures could stand before the hungriest of lions and not be molested or even noticed. If a warded character touches an animal or attacks any creature, even with a spell, the spell ends for all recipients. Note, beasts such as owlbears, magical beasts such as blink dogs, and vermin such as giant scorpions are not animals, as defined by the spell. See the monster manual. Owlbears are beasts, and magical beasts like blink dogs. Okay, so that's and all vermin, all the giant insects are not considered animals. You could increase the level of this spell to second level, and now you could add all those as the second level version of that spell. There is not a second level version of that spell in this book, so that's how I would also upgrade that spell to use. But if you were trying to get around the dogs or lions or whatever was guarding an enemy fortress, that could be very useful. It lasts 10 minutes per level, so it lasts 100 rounds per level of the caster. So you could use that as a potion. You could use that as an item that a group of people can hold on to, so a rod that they could hold on to, that even though it would be a rod, you wouldn't need a craft rod for it because it's a one-use item, and doesn't have any other functions like a rod would have. They could cast it while holding that, and then the item would be destroyed or just depowered completely, and then they could go around any of the animals that are there as they would sneak. They would still have to deal with the non-animal counterparts of trying not to be seen, but as far as the guard animals, they would be unseen. Magic Fang. One natural weapon of subject creature gets a +1 to attack and damage. This being a druid, of course that's useful for a druid. If you're using war animals, it could be useful. The problem is, how would you activate it? At least that's the problem that I have in my mind. Because if you're not the druid casting it, you have to have a way to activate it. And other than making a permanent item, you need something that was temporary because it's a lot cheaper. Lasts 1 minute per level. It also, if you're a good druid, Magic Fang is considered blessed, which also has special effects. But it affects slam attacks, fists, bite, or other natural weapons. This spell does not change an unarmed strike's damage from subtle damage to normal damage, but it does give them the +1 bonus. Okay, so if you're going to use it for brawling, I could see that having a pugilist set of your soldiers, maybe they'd be your flanking set or something, come in and fisticuffs. They could use the one-use item. Then I could say, well, it could be an armband or whatever, and then touch it, say the word. It powers them up for the duration, and then it disintegrates. But on an actual creature, you'd probably have to put it on a collar, and then from there you would have to say the command word yourself and then release the creature to do what it's going to do with the Magic Fang. That's how I would get around that initial problem I was thinking of. Obscuring Mist. This is a great one. Put it on projectiles. drop that where you want, and the areas start filling with mist. Now, the downside is if there's any wind, and the stronger the wind, the worse it is for this, it'll blow the mist away. Also, if there's a lot of heat, it'll raise the mist up. So if you're using this, use it after use it before you're going to use fire as a weapon, or use it only on calmer days. But you could drop just clouds of mist everywhere, and now they can't see very far. So you could retreat while your enemy can't see. You could attack your enemy while they can't see. Pass without a trace. One subject per level, leaves no tracks. That's great for your scouting party specifically. It's also great if you're trying to retreat in an organized way, not a full out run away type of retreat. You could use that, and now they can't follow you to where you're going. So to use pass without a trace in those fashions, you could make an object that they could carry that they could activate. Now they pass without a trace for the duration of that spell. $10 minutes per level. So you'd either want a couple of these items, or you would want one item that could do like an hour of you passing without a trace. That way there's a big gap before they'll ever pick up the trail again. Shillelagh, cudgel or quarterstaff becomes a +1 weapon for 1 minute per level, doing 1d10 damage. That is a great spell for your druid, especially if you travel lighter than normal druids and don't carry a lot of weapons. Now all of a sudden you got a magical weapon, and B, it does a lot of decent damage. I don't see that being useful unless you wanted to pass out a whole bunch of +1 clubs to your well, actually, that could be useful. Okay, so you pass out a whole bunch of clubs that are one-use items. When it's activated, instead of lasting 1 minute per level, it'll last 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Craft Wonders item, I think, is 3 minutes. Craft Weapons and Armor, 3 minutes. Okay, so it lasts at least 3 minutes. It'd be a +1 weapon and do a d10 damage. So they'd go from using whatever the normal weapon they're armed with, longsword, d8, or spear, d8, to a weapon that does a d10 damage, and it's smaller, it's not necessarily very heavy. So I could see a whole bunch of your soldiers all of a sudden having that, and then you could fight something that has damage reduction to magic, and this would do that damage. Now, in 3rd edition, they had damage reduction to a magic bonus, not magic itself. So you had, say, 5 damage reduction, you'd have 5 damage reduction to dash nothing, 5 damage reduction to silver, 5 damage reduction to +1 magical items. So anything +1 or better could ignore the damage reduction, and it just went up from there. Summon Nature's Ally 1, calls creature to fight. Other than the creature not being very powerful, the best way to use this one is to drop a whole bunch of summoning beads, summoning ammo into the middle of the enemy, and now they have something to contend with while they're trying to maintain formation. Badger, dire rat, dog, hawk, viper. It'd be a tiny viper, but a viper. So the best ones to use would be badger, dire rat, dog, and viper. The hawk would not be quite as good to use, but I would use it anyways. And I just have all this random animal show up out of the magical ammunition. Do them all as arrowheads, do them all as bolt heads, do them all as bullet heads or bullets. They could throw that at the enemy into an area. Whether it hits the enemy or not is just a bonus to some damage to somebody. And just it hitting, say, the surface after being fired, hitting any surface after being fired activates the magic of the creature. Now all of a sudden you got all these creatures amongst the enemy soldiers, and especially once somebody sees the snake and yells snake, that's going to cause a panic. A badger tearing into somebody is going to cause a panic. A dog tripping somebody is going to be very, very bad. And so you could just see that area of the formation fall apart, even if you only had one volley for your archers to fire into them. Or you could give them sling bullets to your shield wall guys, the ones that are further in the back, say the third, fourth row of your shield wall guys, could sling these over into the enemy. So that's how I would use Summon Nature's Ally in a warfare setting. The monsters aren't very powerful though, so if they could manage to get time without losing their front of their formation, they could kill the animals quickly and then get back to the fighting. So if you were using this tactic, you would want to push hard into the area that is weakened. And if you're successful or lucky, you could break their morale and they could break and run. So that's how I would go about that. And that was the last spell out of the first level Druid spell list for 3rd edition. This video has gotten pretty long, so if you've made it to the end of the video, thank you. What spells were interesting to you? Let me know in the comments below. And until we all game again, guys.